As someone who has enjoyed the Zero Escape games, I was quite excited to see that their creator is developing a totally new IP. Naturally, I knew that while different, it's still going to be very similar to the games that came before it. After all, Bloodborne was still quite similar to Dark Souls, and so was Sekiro. When you manage to find a niche, you usually don't stray too far from it. AI the Somnium Files is different from the Zero Escape series in many ways, but it's also similar. The first thing that struck me was the price though. Today you can buy the whole Zero Escape trilogy for about €35 on Steam. I'm not sure if they were ever individually full-priced games, but I doubt it. The first game was a Nintendo DS exclusive after all, well, at least for a while. Then it became available on pretty much any platform you can think of. At such a high price point, the requirements and expectations rise significantly. The Somnium Files would have to be a huge improvement in terms of both story and especially gameplay in order to justify such a high price. For those of you who have not played the Zero Escape games, I plan on releasing reviews of each of them in the near future since I'm currently replaying them on the PC. It might even be that the reviews are up depending on when you are watching this one. Anyway, let's first talk about the game from a technical standpoint. First of all, you can't force it to run in any ultra-wide resolutions, at least not as of today. Perhaps someone will figure out a way in the future. That's really disappointing. I tried to mess with the files and only ended up with the same resolution but with huge black bars on both sides. No luck really. I've played it on Windows 10 with the latest updates and had absolutely no crashes or other issues with it whatsoever, but a lot of people on Steam have been complaining that the game is effectively unplayable on Windows 7, so keep that in mind. The graphics have seen significant improvements coming from the Zero Escape series. The animations are also much better but still very far from what a proper full-price game should be. The characters appear livelier now and you see a lot more actual movement, but it still looks and feels basic and stiff. While not as often as in previous games, you still have lots of cases where actions are actually hidden behind the view of the camera just by having a fade to black transition. For example, one scene your character says something inappropriate to a girl, and instead of showing us how she smacks him, we get to look at the background while hearing a smacking sound. That's just lazy and cheap. Sadly, this example is not an exception. I'm willing to let that one slide with cheaper games, but not when this game costs as much as an Assassin's Creed game, for example, and many other AAA titles. It took me 35 hours to play through the whole thing, which is about the same time it took me to finish any of the Zero Escape games individually. People, however, report that it only took them about 25 hours on average, so I guess I'm a bit slower than the average player in this case. Playtime was to my satisfaction. Before I start talking about the story, I want to address the gameplay. This time it's more varied than in the previous games. You have 3 different types of gameplay. Since your character is a policeman from a special investigations unit, he has to solve a murder mystery. The first gameplay type is what I call the investigation. Here you walk around places of interest, interacting with other characters and finding clues. This is a linear experience and is the least interesting part of the game. It's usually used for story exposition and character development. Then comes the Somnium part of the game. Here our character invades the dreams of people and solves very simplistic puzzles. You have 6 minutes while inside the Somnium, but time moves differently while there. It is almost completely stopped while your character stands still and moves normally as your character is moving around. Additionally, any action you perform by interacting with objects also costs a specific amount of seconds. This is also my biggest complaint. First of all, attempting to do something which cannot be done will still cost you time. For example, if you select to use a mining pick on something but you don't actually have a mining pick, your character will simply state that the action is impossible since you lack the tool to perform it, but you will still lose the 30 seconds that action would have cost you if you had the tool, which is really shitty. And there are many actions which are obvious jokes and not to be taken seriously. While it is true that dream logic can be crazy, some are still obviously designed to be silly jokes, and while I was curious most of the time, I would not go and try them simply because they too have a time cost related to them. The issue with that is that I am curious to see what the gag is, what the joke is with that action. Like you find a bucket, you can put it on the character's head. It sounds stupid, it's just one example, but it is curious to see it happen. And due to the fact that it will cost you time, which is effectively your currency inside the Somnium world, it is a bad idea to do something you know will not help you progress, especially if you're not certain what you have to do in order to progress, because that means you need to have more time to figure it out. So exploration within that world is discouraged by this, since if your time runs out, you have to try again. Another problem can be that the Somnium puzzles can often be a simple trial and error. As I have have stated before, dream logic is crazy at times, and sometimes doing something weird is actually the only thing that will allow you to progress through the level. Something I forgot to mention is the fact that you can get time bonuses. Some actions have a time bonus attached to them. This means, for example, that kicking a door open rather than opening it the normal way will give you a small bonus which can cut the next action's time cost by half. And that's just one example of it. There are even negative bonuses which will actually increase the cost of your next action. As you can see, the Somnium is an interesting idea, but that idea is inhibited by the fact that the puzzles are either too simple or pure guesswork. You can also find a few hidden collectibles in there, but as I have stated before, due to the time restraints, exploration actually is discouraged in this game, at least in the Somnium. Another thing that I have noticed is that the correct choice is almost always, and that's when it comes to the puzzles inside that Somnium, it's almost always the action with the highest cost in terms of time, which is kind of a giveaway. Whenever I was unsure, I would just go with the action that cost the most and would almost always be right. And I'm saying almost always, but I think it was like once or twice that this was not the correct selection out of maybe 30, 40, 50 times. I see the point of the time system, but I'm not convinced that the benefits outweigh the negatives in this case. The third gameplay mechanic is the interrogation bit. In that part, our character is questioning someone and presenting evidence to back their point up. This reminded me somewhat of the Ace Attorney series. It's simplified here and doesn't happen often enough in my opinion, but I did enjoy it quite a bit. The thing is, it doesn't seem to be possible to fail at it. Selecting the wrong evidence simply gets you a comment from our protagonist stating that this doesn't seem right. So it is linear, but I only found that out very late in the game, since before that I had always selected the correct option. You do have another part, which is the action scenes. Those are, however, also extremely linear and even feature a few occasional quick time events. The problem here is that all of them are childish in nature. The ways our character and his companions manage to win against impossible odds are frankly idiotic. You have cases where several men armed with automatic weapons are shooting at a character while she's just a meter away from them, beating them up with a pipe, and naturally they never manage to hit her. And other such absurd situations, which you could see in some extremely childish animes, for example. And since I am at it, let me address my biggest issue with this game. It simply doesn't know what it wants to be. At first, it looks like a serious crime drama with adult themes. While the anime style graphics can deter most people, I was actually okay with them at first. But then you have these sudden shifts in tone where the game is extremely childish and stupid. Not only are some of the jokes and action scenes that way, even some character models become like this. For example, take this character here, the one that you're looking at right now. This looks like it was designed by a toddler, and while being the most extreme example, it's not the only one. At one point the game tries to be serious, it tells you dramatic stories, which are definitely not something that little children would understand, nor would it be appropriate for them to watch and hear these stories. Stories of sexual relations, murder, and cross-dressing homosexuals. There are lots of adult jokes which some people seem to dislike, but I personally found quite entertaining. And then in the next moment, the game can shift into being stupidly childish in terms of jokes, animations, and as we have seen, even character models. This totally kills the vibe and is quite annoying. I feel like we've reached an appropriate point in which I can talk about the story. We are Kaname Date, a Japanese policeman working for a special unit called Abyss. This unit uses a machine to enter people's dreams and find valuable information this way. Oftentimes, for one reason or another, our suspects or witnesses will not be willing to cooperate. So this is a way to get more information which can be used to make them talk or straight out learn new things regarding an investigation. Our protagonist is missing one of his eyes and uses a prosthetic which comes paired with an AI companion. That artificial intelligence is called Aiba and is our partner for this investigation. So far the story is pretty interesting. However, we learn very early on that our character has no memory of anything that happened later than 6 years ago. So the story features some kind of partial amnesia. This is also where I got annoyed because people will refuse to talk about any events prior to that point, indicating that something is clearly being hidden. Amnesia is a cheap way to make a story more interesting and excuse our character's oblivious behavior. It's often frowned upon because it's quite lazy. It doesn't help that the killings we investigate involve victims whose left eyes have been removed. The killer is then labeled the new Cyclops killer. Why new, you ask? Because apparently 6 years ago, just about when our memory ends, a similar case had been investigated where people lost one eye. Sadly, no one wants to talk about it. So as you can see, the story becomes extremely cliche from the start. There's a lot of foreshadowing and I will not spoil anything in this review, but I found the premise very poorly designed. It still ends up being a very enjoyable story by the end, especially when you see what is happening and how some of the suspicions that you've had are partially confirmed, but there are also a few surprises. It's it's done relatively good. I mean, the creator of this game is also a creator of the Zero Escape series, so clearly he knows what he's doing in terms of story, but it could have even been better. That's all I'm saying. Similarly to the Zero Escape series, this game also features a flowchart. Here, important moments of the game are illustrated and the player can jump back and forth at will. This serves an important purpose, since in some of the Somnium levels the path was split in two, and depending on what you do, you will unlock a whole new story direction. At some points, right before a big revelation, the game will not allow you to continue until you have progressed through the other possible paths. This is something that was in Zero Escape as well. However, there the game was set around the whole idea of time and space traveling mechanics. As that story progressed, our protagonists started to get better at it, and information they had gathered in another storyline would carry over, making for some very interesting moments when they would realize that this has already happened and they know things they shouldn't really have any way of knowing. The reason why I'm telling you this here is that such moments appear within this game as well. However, in this world, there is no explanation as to why it happens. Our character has no idea why he knows some things in this game's world. Here, time and space travels do not appear to be a proper thing. Yes, we explore different paths of the story, but it's more like a consequence of a choice, and the game basically lets you play it out to see what will happen. In the Zero Escape series, the whole game was about the time and space travel thing of the characters. Sometimes things they did in another timeline would actually affect their current timeline. It was explained and logical, while here it's not, and it feels like more was planned but then simply cut due to time or budget restraints. Don't get me wrong, the different timelines were fun to explore. They also flushed out the characters and their motivations better, but at times it was annoying to have to listen to some explanation for the third time while having already discovered that information in two other timelines. Not to mention that it's also quite annoying to observe how our character doesn't remember any significant thing from other timelines, but on rare occasions, and I really mean super rarely, he will remember something very stupid and useless, and that's pretty much it. He'll just be like, how do I know this? And that's it, no explanation. And while I did ultimately enjoy the story, it's important to state that the voice acting was the real MVP here. Same as with the Zero Escape games, the voice acting here is excellent and really helped keep me interested. It is without a doubt the strongest point in favor of playing this game. You can choose to play it in original Japanese dub or in the English one. I chose English and I'm not disappointed. I did that with the Zero Escapes as well, and it was also very good. So in conclusion, should you play this game? First of all, let me return to the current price of €60. This price is absolutely unreasonable and should not be paid for this game. Yes, I did like it for the most part, but even if it didn't have as many flaws as it did, and that is a huge if, that price would be too high. Still, half that much would be appropriate, but not more. As for who should consider playing this game, everyone who enjoys visual novel games would be entertained by AI the Somnium files. It's difficult to say whether fans of the Zero Escape series would like this, because I am such a fan and I did enjoy it, but I've read a lot of people who are fans did not. So it's a dice roll really. I've been pretty critical towards this game, but this is mostly due to the fact that it demands big bucks. So if you want to play with the big boys, you get to be treated like a big boy. And last but not least, if you do decide you want to play, just wait it out. I guarantee you the price will be slashed in no time. This is an unreasonable price, and I cannot believe that there will be that many sales at that price. They will cut it very quickly, and like I said, half price, 30 bucks, sounds reasonable, should be okay for this game. And before I leave you, I wanted to let you know that I'm publishing news regarding free games on my Patreon account. There are a lot of freebies coming out all the time, so I would advise all of you to just take a look at my Patreon from time to time. Check it out regularly. The posts are public even if you're not a patron, so no need to donate unless you really want to. Naturally, I wouldn't mind any donations as well, but they are not a requirement, so keep an eye on it. Lots of free games, and I'm talking good games such as GTA Vice City, the Arkham series of Batman, and Metro 2033 Redux. So serious stuff. Go check it out and keep checking it out, because you might miss something out. Unfortunately, most of these offers are very time limited. In any case, keep an eye on it. Thanks for watching this video. I would be very grateful if you took a look at the other ones as well. You know the whole thing about subscribing, upvoting, and of course leaving me a comment, because why the hell wouldn't you? And have a great day. Thanks for watching.